Game over, man. Game over.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. So serious. Roll out.
I am Iron Man.
This is a tasty burger.
Welcome to the In Session Film Podcast.
Welcome to this podcast review for December 23rd, 2023, and I'm JD Duran.
And I'm Brennan Cassidy.
Hey, thanks for joining us for this conversation, everybody. This is going to be fun, Brendan, because my day, as we are recording this, began with Aquaman, and it is ending with Aquaman. We have come full circle.
My man.
That's how it is. I saw this film this morning at 9 a.m.
Wow.
9 o'clock.
Committed.
First thing, I was going to take my son Sam, and at the last minute, he said, "Nope, I'm staying home. It's too early." And I said, "Probably a good call."
Did he sense something? Did he sense something amiss about this movie?
Maybe he probably had some sort of instinct, and he stuck to his convictions. I, on the other hand, knew that we were going to talk about it, so I went ahead.
Does Sam like that first Aquaman? Has he seen it?
I don't even know if he's seen it,
oh,
which is why I was surprised he wanted to come see the sequel.
Okay,
but yeah, no, he decided at the last second he wasn't going to go. So I went this morning. It was 9 o'clock, as I noted, and it was really funny because the showing that I didn't choose the huge IMAX experience. That was the 9 o'clock showing was in that theater.
Right.
And I wanted to go at 9 and, get it out of the way. So I went at 9 o'clock, huge IMAX, theater. I don't know, 300, 400 seats in there, whatever it is.
Okay. Yeah.
There's maybe 8 or 9 of us out of 300 seats. And it's everyone in my position. It's all dudes, all by themselves, not with anybody, all sitting by themselves, in various seats throughout this whole giant theater. So it was really funny. But saw it early this morning, and here we are. We are recording this pretty late at night.
Yeah.
On the same day. And so I'm beginning and ending my day with Jason Momoa.
And
James
the man himself. And I was secretly excited for this movie, despite some of the middling reviews it's been getting, because I don't know if this is a bit hot takey to say, but that first Aquaman is my favorite film in the now concluding DCEU. I love that first Aquaman. I think it is a lot of fun.
Yeah, I liked the first Wonder Woman quite a bit as well. But this is that first Aquaman, probably number one. I mean, worst case is it's those two really. Birds of Prey, I guess, if we're considering that DCEU was pretty good.
That's a really interesting movie. I liked it when I first saw it, but I think I need to give Birds of Prey a second watch. There are things that movie is doing that I think are really interesting. Plus, any movie that features Margot Robbie front and center as Harley Quinn, I think deserves recognition. That's the one I think that is probably going to age the best with me with time.
Yeah, those are my top 3 for sure.
Well, I did like Wonder Woman 1984 a lot more than most people did.
Yes, you did. Weirdly, a lot more.
Yeah, I still stand by my love for that movie. I think the movie's wacky and goofy and sincere.
Okay, very fair. But all of that to say, we are fans of the first Aquaman.
Yes.
High on our list, however you rank it, we're pretty high on it. And now here they are back with Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom.
Yeah.
Which also is the last film of the former DCEU. So here we are, ending the whole shebang 10 years after it began.
And it does not have the same level of finality as Endgame does.
No. Let's say it... no, it does not.
It doesn't soar. It sinks a little bit, I guess.
Sinks, all the way to the bottom.
All the way to Atlantis.
So, this is directed by James Wan, and it stars Jason Momoa, Patrick Wilson, Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, sort of Amber Heard, but not really.
Yeah.
Sort of Nicole Kidman, but not really. and a bunch of others that come and go throughout the film.
Yeah.
If you're not familiar with Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, having failed to defeat Aquaman the first time, Black Manta, he's back at it. He's still driven by the need to avenge his father's death and will stop at nothing to take Aquaman down once and for all.
I love the animation because it usually means you love this movie or you're trying to find some joy that didn't exist.
Yep, we'll see. Of course, there's a Lost Kingdom that is also at play here as well, which we might get into. So, Brennan, what did you think about Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom?
We'll say it again. That first Aquaman, very high on our list. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, not that high on my list.
Okay. Here's the question of the day.
Yeah.
Do you at least think it's better than The Flash?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's better than The Flash. I think it's better than Black Adam. I think it's better than Shazam! Fury of the Gods.
Okay. Yeah.
But I do think it sits in a similar camp as movies like Shazam 2 and Black Adam that feel very obligatory with this DCEU ending. These films just feel very passionless. They just have this like I don't care attitude, right? That they were just merely obligated to make these movies because they were in development hell for so long and they have to conclude these movies, get them out there and just get this done. That's what these movies all feel like. But this movie is at least a little bit better because there are at least some moments where I can sense James Wan's having a little bit of fun. When he goes full on horror, in almost a Sam Raimi-like way, there are some pretty creative sequences here. But they are very few and far between. It's a very passionless film. It's nowhere near as good as that first Aquaman because that first Aquaman, while you can argue it's not really the greatest of movies, especially superhero movies, it had a self-awareness that really made it all the forgiving, right? The idea of an octopus playing drums or Nicole Kidman riding on a robot shark, right? Those movies should be fun, right? And that first Aquaman knows the stupidity of that. And it has fun with it.
Sure.
This one doesn't really take advantage of it that much. It's very passively interested in its main conceit and its central premise. The idea that this is a superhero that talks to fish, right? This should be goofier and should play into that a bit more. And sadly, this just feels like a movie that needed to come out because they wanted to make it for like 6 years, right? That's all it is. So I don't think it's that great. I think it's better than some of the other recent offerings because there's at least Jason Momoa front and center, right? You at least have him. And I do think he's at least still committed to the character. But it is definitely sad to see this DCEU conclude in such a passionless way, in such a like a whimpering way, right? If it were like terrible in an interesting way, I would at least be able to forgive that. But there's just no more DNA left to pull from these, and it's really sad to see it go this way.
Yeah, I'm not terribly high on this film either, but I do think it is better than a lot of the latest offerings from the DCEU.
Yeah,
really, Blue Beetle is the only one that I think is better than Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Did not like The Flash at all.
Yeah,
I think Shazam! Fury of the Gods is even more passionless and a worsely made movie. Black Adam, not very good. This is where I will be against the grain a little bit. James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, I don't like very much.
I'm with you. I don't like it very much either.
It is a better crafted, a better made movie than Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. But I think I prefer this to The Suicide Squad, if I'm being honest.
Fair. I might as well. Jason Momoa just makes it better. That's the simple thing for me.
And then going back to Wonder Woman 1984, if we're removing Zack Snyder's Justice League, which I would say is definitely better than this film for sure. But if we're removing that and we go back to Wonder Woman 1984, which I don't love, you're clearly much higher on it than I am.
Yep.
Is it better than Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom? Maybe, but if so, certainly not by much. I mean, I'd have to go all the way back to Birds of Prey, where I can say confidently that it is a better movie in pretty much all respects than Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom.
Yeah.
So, and that certainly speaks to the overall quality of the DCEU, I guess. And also, Birds of Prey is only 2 films removed from Aquaman, for context.
It just goes to show, where this universe ultimately went, right? And the disparity between some of these movies.
Yeah. So while I'm not terribly high on Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, I do think it's better than most of its counterparts that we've seen over the last few years, the last 3 years or so.
Yeah. So we don't hate the film, but it definitely doesn't have the same level of passion and care that first one did.
And for me, it's mostly the broad spectacle of it. I just think it is dispassionate for all the reasons that you talked about. But I do think there are individual components that are good. I think, to your point, James Wan, when he really wants to have fun, when he's given the green light to do some clever and interesting things, you know, that comes through in this film for sure. You talk about some of the dynamic we see here between Patrick Wilson and Jason Momoa. I think the writing is having a lot of fun there. Jason Momoa as a performer is still having a lot of fun with this character. He's really playing it up. He's hilarious, diverting, extremely charismatic, and in this film, a little emotionally invigorating as a new father. I love that here as well.
I like that stuff. Yeah, I like that stuff. There was
like the first 10 minutes of this film are by far the best. It's the best thing about it.
Which is interesting because much of the first 10 minutes is also a recap of the first movie.
A little bit. It's a little bit of that. It's also him talking to his son about how he's Aquaman or what he does as Aquaman. Like I love the interesting editing there of him playing with the toys and talking to his son, and it's intercut with him actually, you know, saving this boat or whatever.
I will say, like sometimes needle drops in movies can be a bit cheap, but I weirdly like the drop of "Born to Be Wild."
Yeah,
maybe it's just because I really like that song, so it always works for me.
I like,
but it fits the vibe. It fits the vibe.
I think it fits the vibe as well, and the fun of Momoa and James Wan. I think all of that is great, and there's some heart to it. Like when Momoa, to speak to his commitment, as fun as he is, that dynamic he has with the little baby there is really endearing and charming. Like, I really love that. You really get a sense of fatherhood, and I love how it's a microcosm of The Incredibles 2, and how that film is a documentary of parenthood. Like it channels that energy and spirit a little bit in these clever ways. Of course, it's a little heightened with the whole peeing thing. Thankfully, I haven't. Yeah. I need to knock on some wood.
That hasn't happened with Andrew.
It hasn't happened with Andrew yet. But
did that ever happen?
I've spoken it into the universe.
Did that ever happen with Sam?
No.
When he was that age?
No.
Okay.
Knock on wood. It's happened to Brandy a couple of times, but not to me.
Okay.
When I'm changing the diapers, I'm usually very quick. That was Arthur's problem here. He undid the diaper and just stared at him. He did not get to work. You can't do that. Once you undo the diaper and it's just dangling there, you have to be quick.
Well,
got to be on these things.
That's the fun point, is that the film is very clearly trying to show Arthur as perhaps a inexperienced father. Like he's just not very good at it yet.
Well, and 100%. That comes back to the whole, not being able to sleep at night and him being very tired and like all that fun stuff for sure. And I think that's also part of why he finds it. And again, there's something about Momoa's performance that's just so charming. Like when he sees his son kind of interact with the fish there, because he's a first-time father, you see your kids have
it's like he's learning to walk.
First big moments. Exactly. Like you're just elated. And there's something about that I think the film captures very well. Like at least as far as my experience as a father, I think it captured how I felt in those kinds of moments with my kids. So I think the film gets that right.
Sure.
And then there's of course a bunch of stuff in the middle, but then you get to the end of the film where the baby is in peril a little bit, and you get that moment where he's like, "Get away from my son," and it's like the father in me was like, "Hell yes." Fist in the air. Love that.
Momoa sells the line. I will say that he sells the line. Yeah.
Again, like it's all Momoa for sure. but he makes it work. Like, so there are elements of it that I do think are very good. When Momoa is allowed to be fun, when he's allowed to be a father, when he's allowed to just have his dynamic with Patrick Wilson and the whole brotherhood thing, like there's a sincerity in Momoa. Like Momoa cares, regardless of how everyone else is around him. He cares, and that does come through for sure. Yeah. I just wish the rest of the film had his energy, and sadly, it just doesn't. Like all of the Black Manta stuff is very mundane and boring.
Sadly,
Randall
because
Park is doing his best, but it just
And I love these actors. Like I love Yala Abdul Mateen II as an actor. And he was compelling in that first Aquaman. I like the idea of bringing a villain back, right? So there's no new work to do. But at the same time, it still underserves the character. The movie does, at least. And it's really unfortunate. It's a very simple premise that he's just out for revenge, and that could work. That could be an easy way to let the actor tear that character apart, right? And do some really good things with it. But sadly, he's so restricted by plot and by story. And the same could be said about even people like Amber Heard and Nicole Kidman and Dolph Lundgren, who reprised their roles, and they're only in the film briefly, but like all of those scenes underwater at Atlantis are there just to move the plot along, and they're so drab, and they serve very little. But when you then get to scenes with Patrick Wilson and Jason Momoa on land in what is clearly a ripoff of Avatar, right? The way this film treats global warming, it thinks it's Hayao Miyazaki, but it's so on the nose. It just doesn't quite work thematically, but at least their banter is kind of fun. I wish we got more.
I thought so too. I thought it was very good. Like, I mean, the plotting of the film is very mundane, but they make it work. Like, I was interested to see their dynamic and where it'd go. It was wonderfully playful. A lot of the jokes landed for me, even the gross ones, such as the whole cockroach moment.
See, like, I like that stuff, but interestingly, there were a lot of pop culture references that I found kind of
I'm going to take you back to Azkaban.
There's a Harry Potter reference, and isn't there like a there was some other reference in that same sentence? I forget. There's what it was.
There's a Loki reference. Yeah,
that was it. It was a Marvel reference. That's what it was. And it seemed too on the nose. There's a Castaway reference, which admittedly was so bad I actually kind of had to laugh.
I mean, it's so obvious though, given how Patrick Wilson looks in the moment. Like he literally looks like Tom Hanks from that movie.
He does, yeah. So, and it also doesn't help that his last name in real life is Wilson, so it adds a little meta component to it, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Like I just, and that's the thing. Like when it's allowed to just be about the characters and be in the moment, I think the film is genuinely fun. It's not offering anything of artistic merit, but this is a big popcorn movie, and when you want these things to have a diverting quality. And it is in those moments. I think when it's servicing plot and exposition, it's not great. And sadly, there's a lot of that. And unfortunately, go ahead.
Well, I will say this movie has probably one of the most hilarious exposition dumps I think I've ever seen in a movie, where all of a sudden Patrick Wilson knows everything about what they're going for. All he had to do was touch a trident, and it's like, I know everything, and here's all the information for you. We even get an extended Lord of the Rings flashback with it too. It's
incredible, just absolutely incredible. But so there's a lot of that, and unfortunately, I think the same thing falls with Amber Heard and Nicole Kidman as well. It's it's really jarring because we're 40 minutes into this movie at least, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, onto the screen flies Nicole Kidman, and you're like, holy hell, that is Nicole Kidman, one of the best actresses working today. She's in this movie.
But it's not even like a big reveal to let us know that she's in this movie.
No, there's no heroic element to it, no score to amplify it, no close up. She just flies onto the screen.
Yeah. Nicole Kidman flying on a robot shark should be more fun than it is here.
Yeah, it should be.
Yeah. Actually, I mean, almost all the underwater sequences did not work for me. And that's unfortunate because like one of the things I liked about that first Aquaman is that James Wan was doing some interesting things with the action scenes. But then again, so many of them actually took place on land that he could actually infuse them with some type of perspective, right?
Yeah.
When so much is happening underwater in this movie, it's so chaotic. You can't really tell who's who most of the time that it doesn't ground the action sequences all that well. And they're just, sadly, most of them aren't very creatively rendered either. And that's, that just adds to the passionless quality that we keep talking about.
Absolutely. And I understand that you don't want to necessarily recopy the first film verbatim.
Sure.
However, you are bringing back Black Manta, who is so pivotal to this film.
Yeah.
So it's not as if you're just avoiding regurgitation altogether anyway.
Right.
So it is jarring when your female protagonists, such as Amber Heard and Nicole Kidman, when they're just relegated to the background as much as they are.
Yeah.
Because they were huge in the first movie.
Yeah,
like Nicole Kidman is a big part of it. Amber Heard obviously was the co-star. Like she's a huge part of the first movie, and they're barely recognized here.
Yeah.
That to me is, it's like, okay, well, if you're gonna bring back Black Manta, if you're gonna bring back Patrick Wilson, I mean, it's essentially all of the same characters from the first movie. The plotting is just the difference. So we're gonna relegate these two pivotal characters, faces that we very much recognize. They're going to be 3% of this film, given how huge they were in the first movie. Like, I mean, I could understand a little bit with Nicole Kidman's character anyway. The character.
Yeah.
When you cast Nicole Kidman in the role, relegating her to the degree this film does is just unforgivable. But the character itself, I can kind of understand.
Yeah.
Mera, on the other hand, is the wife of Aquaman.
Like it almost makes it look like they're divorced for most of the movie or something. Which
she's the mother of the baby, and that's a huge plot point here.
I feel like it's sort of the opposite of what you talk about there with Nicole Kidman, whereas the character might not be as necessary, but the actor should be. And in the case of Amber Heard's Mera, the character absolutely should be, but I understand why maybe Amber Heard is more limited here, given the unfortunate surroundings of her and Johnny Depp, and I feel like political. And I feel like that could have bled into that. But sadly, if that were to be the reason why she's more limited in this movie, it does affect the quality quite drastically, and it's an unfortunate byproduct.
I just don't think it services this film, and especially that character. Say what you will about Amber Heard, but she was such a big part of that first movie to relegate her to a nothing role here. And which is funny because they do give her a couple of moments of heroism. Like she shows up. It feels
unearned. Like I almost had to forget. Like I felt like I forgot who the character was for a while in this movie. It's
and she has these really majestic powers that are formidable, and it's not just Aquaman. It's not just Arthur whose son is in peril. It's hers.
Yeah.
And to be fair, the film does demonstrate that slightly, but not as much as it should have. She should have equally had as much urgency as Arthur does. But there's no agency to that character here. She's just in the background in a way that is very dismissive, in a way that's a little egregious.
Yeah, I'm with you.
But when she's on screen, I think she's perfectly adequate. Nicole Kidman, it's unfair. Like, again, I understand relegating the character. Nicole Kidman, though, is
one of the best actresses of all time.
Like, she has like 3 scenes in this film, but when she's able to be Nicole Kidman, she's so goddamn good. Like, she's
really not spilling out plot, or at least helping move the plot along. So it's underserved in that regard too. I just wanted to like this more because I loved what James Wan was doing in that first film. There are times I think Aquaman is my favorite James Wan film. Like, I enjoy that film that much. I think it is so much fun. And it's a movie that, unlike The Lost Kingdom here, that first Aquaman feels big and expensive. It doesn't always have the best visual effects, but it's got a campy quality to it that it doesn't take itself seriously. But it always felt like really big and grand, like it was an event of some sort. And I don't feel that here. This film just feels like a passing afterthought.
I agree. When it's allowed to be playful, though, I did like it. I liked, what was his name? Topo the Octopus, I thought was fun.
That was cool.
Sad that he was relegated to a small role, but he was fun.
I like the music here. Once again, Rupert Gregson-Williams reprising his role as composer. I think the music is still fine and at least serves its purpose. There are moments where he's able to swell certain melodic motifs that I thought were really creative and playful. So like there are a few attributes here I like, but yeah, once again, kind of fits into that same category of these final DCEU films that they're just here because they have to wrap a bow on it. That's all it's here for.
Yeah, and sadly, a lot of this film is just getting us from one set piece to the next.
Yeah.
But when it's allowed to just be about the characters, I enjoyed myself. I did have fun.
Yeah. I just wish there was more of that.
Yeah, I agree. Sadly, it's just, it's far and few in between, but...
Yeah. Well, the DCEU is officially over until James Gunn comes back with Superman Legacy. And I will say this, like, as much... I haven't seen Blue Beetle yet, so I can't rank that in the 15 films in this universe. So I've seen 14 of them, and for the record, I'm also not counting the Joss Whedon cut of Justice League. I feel like most people wouldn't want to include that either because Zack Snyder's film is kind of the definitive version of it now.
Yes. Yep.
But yeah, like most of these, I haven't really liked. But weirdly, as much as I don't really care for the Zack Snyder films like Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, I'm at least starting to give them more of an edge because there's at least something memorable and passionate about them. They're at least attempting to do some interesting things. So I think as a result, they're more interesting failures as opposed to the sheer banality of Black Adam and Shazam Fury of the Gods, which I think are more insufferable because of that. I'd rather see superhero films like this trip over ambitions rather than not take any ambitions at all or do anything ambitious.
I agree. And I'm reaching here because I don't really know, so forgive the myopic nature of this, but I kind of wonder if part of the banality of Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom comes at the cost of knowing that this means nothing. That this is simply a coda to the DCEU, and after its release, we're moving on. I think Momoa gives it all. And
I think he tries. He tries.
He wrote the story here, so he was involved from top to bottom.
Yeah.
And he is wholly committed. He does a really great job, and I would like to see him replay this character again.
Yeah.
Which we probably won't see now that we're going into the DCU.
I know. Yeah, it's unfortunate.
So it's unfortunate, but he was fully committed, and I just don't know if that was the case, though. Not that they were trying to make a bad movie, but I don't know if their heart was fully in it because Warner Brothers had already played their cards on this.
Yeah.
And that's part of why this film is as mediocre as it is. Maybe that's part of it. And the box office, I think, will very much show that. I mean,
I think it will.
I don't think this is going to do the Flash bad, but I don't think it's going to do a whole lot better.
No. Well, and as we talked about with all those other movies, they didn't do very well because it's starting to become common knowledge that this universe doesn't matter anymore. It is ending. It's ending in a very anticlimactic way. So like it almost makes it seem kind of pointless to go and see these.
Yeah. Which makes me question the ending to this film.
Is that post-credit scene meant to be symbolic of the DCEU?
Maybe. I mean, maybe it could. I wasn't even referring to that, but symbolically, maybe that is hilarious. I'm mostly referring to Arthur's speech there at the end. Because it's this, like if you're looking at it from a broad world building point of view, it's this huge moment where I don't know. Should we get in the spoilers? It's Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. I don't know if anyone listening to this cares.
Like, yeah, if we want to get into it now, we can.
Okay, I'm just gonna spoil this. If you haven't seen the film, maybe pause, watch the film, and come back. But I do want to briefly speak to it. So, at the end of this film, Arthur, as the king of Atlantis, makes the decision he's going to come to the surface and reveal Atlantis to the world.
Yeah,
and he gives this speech to the UN, to the UN, but I think by broadcasting it all over the world, he's revealing Atlantis to the entire world. Mm-hmm. And it's this huge like world building moment if you're looking at it from the context of the DCEU.
Yeah.
That I just like I get why it I guess matters for Arthur in this film, because the politics of being the king, he spoke to earlier, that it's, he doesn't really like doing it, but there are some things that's worth fighting for. He thinks that if they reveal themselves, they can coexist with the with the rest of the planet. So I guess I understand how it brings that full circle in a way.
Sure.
But also it feels like we're revealing something huge that would have an impact on the larger DCEU if we were going to continue this.
Yeah.
But then we're never going to get to see how that affects anything.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of pointless. It just feels a little futile, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it makes for maybe a bit of an ironic coincidence if that were the case. Yeah. But yeah, it might be onto something with how it might speak to the DCEU as a whole. But yeah, maybe it's a reach. I'm not really sure. All I know is that whatever emotionality it was trying to go for, or whatever thematic resolution it was going for, doesn't really quite earn, because the movie just isn't committed to it enough to really make it happen.
Yeah, and the whole Lost Kingdom of it all. What are we doing? What is the point of
it? Treats this whole kingdom's just a MacGuffin. It's all it is.
It's a MacGuffin, absolutely.
It
adds
probably
little value.
The literal biggest MacGuffin in movie history, right? It's an entire city.
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah.
And Black Manta, his response to Arthur there, like, no, I'm gonna be petty here. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Sure.
That's a wonderful arc.
All the power to you, my friend.
Yeah. Well, speaking to the movie itself, the movie's very petty in that regard, I guess.
Yeah. At any rate, that is to say, the writing of this film, not the greatest.
Yeah.
Not the greatest.
No. I think our friend Matt Neglia said it best, I think, in his Letterboxd review, Aquaman and the Lost Screenplay, I think is what he said.
Yeah, no, that's very adequate. That's how
it is. It's very apt. Well said.
Yeah.
Well said.
At any rate, if you agree or disagree with any of our thoughts, you can let us know on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can email us insessionfilm@gmail.com. If you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment below. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, all that fun stuff. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please rate and review us there. It really helps out the show a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Brendan, do you have any final thoughts on anything before we get out of here, man?
I am just really hoping that whatever we get next in the newly dubbed DCU, I just hope it's good.
I just hope so as well.
James Gunn is kind of hit or miss for me, but when he hits, I really like his hits. So if he's able to channel that same level of passion there and not his subversive qualities in the Suicide Squad, which I thought were just there for his own, selfish sake, I think we can get something pretty good here. Because I think Superman Legacy, I don't know if I'll like that movie. Obviously, we don't know anything about it, but I think it's so well cast at this point. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well. I do want to ask for some clarity, though, earlier, because when we were talking about the DCEU, we mentioned Blue Beetle, which I really liked. I liked Blue Beetle a lot. Wasn't that supposed to be the first film of the DCU, though? Or am I misremembering that?
I think James Gunn said something along the lines of that character being part of that world, but the movie is still part of the DCEU. I think he ended up doubling back on those words, but I'd have to confirm that. I think we're at a point now where we can say Superman Legacy is technically going to be the first film in this newly dubbed DCU.
Okay. And that, I think, makes sense. Going with Superman, a la Man of Steel, I guess. I get it. Start with Superman and go from there.
Yeah. And then this time
I thought I had heard Blue Beetle was a part of it. And it would make sense for Blue Beetle to be part of the DCU.
Sure.
It really makes no sense for him to be part of the DCEU.
Yeah,
it's a new character. It's brand new. We've never met him before.
Yeah, that's very fair.
And I liked him, so I'd like to see Jaime back. So,
all right, I gotta see that movie. I'm interested in watching that. Yeah, maybe I'll do that.
I think it's the best one, not just of this year, because there were 4. People complain about Marvel. There were 4 DC movies this year.
And it just goes to show how obligatory it was.
I know. I thought it was by far the best of the 4, hands down.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like most people would say that. I've heard that same those same sentiments from other people.
So, at any rate, looking forward to what James Gunn has up his sleeve next.
Yeah.
You know, R.I.P. DCEU. You were an experience. You know,
hey, and had some hits.
I will say, in the context of in-session film this year, it's an interesting full circle thing as well, right? Because Man of Steel came out in our first year.
That's
when
true.
we reviewed that on the show, it was like episode 12 or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
15.
This was literally a decade long.
And here we are ending the whole shebang in 2023. So
yeah. Wow. What an interesting ride.
Interesting ride, to say the least.
Yep.
All right. With that said, thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on the In Session Film Podcast. God bless Jason Momoa, though.
I love him.
He's the best.